Your core Enneagram number, your core personality type, all of that is always going to be the same primary. Same thing as when you were in the worst season of your life and you just lost a loved one or you got divorced or something horrible happened to you as the best part of your life. You're still that primary personality type. It's just kind of how you were created. That's who you are.
Welcome back to the RV Queens podcast, where we are all about women making money on the road. I'm your host, Kate White, and today we're picking up where we left off in our Enneagram series. If you tuned in last week, you heard a high-level overview of the Enneagram and a get-to-know-you conversation with Taylor Smith, who is a full-time traveler, yoga teacher, and Enneagram enthusiast. In this episode, Taylor's back, and this time she's leading a live workshop we hosted inside the RV Queens Circles. She walks us through all 9 Enneagram types and shares how your number can show up in your business, your relationships, and even on those chaotic travel days we all know too well. One of the most powerful moments of the night came from a community member named Nancy. Hi, Nancy. She started the night not feeling like she fit into any type. She even said, I don't like being put in a box. I mean, a lot of us can relate, right? But by the end of the workshop, she found an Enneagram number that resonated deeply with her and gave the prize that she won at the end of the night to someone else because, in her words, figuring out my number was the real win. Oof, I love that. If you've ever felt unsure about your Enneagram type or had an inconclusive test result, this episode will open your eyes to what's possible. Okay, real quick, before we dive in, I want to tell you about something I am super excited for. On May 8th, 2025, yes, that is coming up soon, I'm co-hosting a live workshop with business strategist Dora Rankin called Podcasts and Partnerships. I will be sharing the exact steps I took to build and monetize the RV Queens podcast while traveling full-time with my family over the past 2 years. And Dora will be teaching how to use your voice and your values to land aligned brand partnerships. If you've been thinking about launching a podcast or wondering how to turn your current podcast into something that actually grows your business and your income, this workshop is for you. Space is limited, so head to dorarankinconsulting.com/podcasts and partnerships. Don't worry, the link is in the show notes to save your spot today. I cannot wait to see you there. All right, my friends, without further ado, let's get into the episode. Grab your coffee and let's roll. Hi, welcome. Welcome, everyone. If you're not familiar with Taylor Smith, she is awesome. She is a multi-passionate person. She's a yoga teacher. She is a graphic designer. She's an Enneagram aficionado. She was recently featured on RV Queens podcast talking about the Enneagram, and hopefully you had a chance to listen to that before this. And if you didn't, that's all right. Tonight, she's going to be talking with us about how the Enneagram and knowing more about your personality can help you as you run a business and in your endeavors. So I'm going to let Taylor take the stage.
Woohoo! Okay, well, thank you, Kate and Kim, for all the hard work that you guys do. So some of it's going to be a little bit of review from when I was on the podcast. If you got a chance to listen to that, you can still listen to that later. It's still fine. You're still going to be able to go ahead. So I'm going to start by talking about, why do you even care? Why do we care about the Enneagram, right? I talked about it on the podcast, and Kate, you seem to really like this part. So I really wanted to push it to explain it to you. Not everybody sees the world through the same lens as you, as me, as my neighbor, as my husband, etc. So some of us have a zoom in lens where we look at all the details. Other people are drone and they're up really high and kind of just looking at the overall picture of things. And we'll get more into that in a minute. Why do you care about specifically? Because of the RV life, right? So we have to communicate with everybody. We have to communicate with the people that live in our tiny house on wheels. We have to communicate with the people that we work for, we work with, we want to work for, we want to work with, people in our campground, our kids, our family, all that. And then conflict resolution goes through that, obviously, the way you communicate, the way you resolve conflicts in your life. And then as an RV entrepreneur, how does that affect your productivity? If you're content creators, how does that affect that as well? We're skipping through a lot of these because I want to make sure I don't go over, but who here has ever asked themselves this question? Or had your spouse, if you're married, ask you, why are you the way you are? Who am I? Why am I the way I am? So I think of the Enneagram as a lens, but also a tool. So we can help to find the answer to that question. So what is the Enneagram? And I'm kind of flying through because you can obviously research more in depth about this. But 9 is Ennea in the original language, and then gram's a diagram. So it's a 9-sided diagram. And in the podcast, we talked about the 9 little circles feeling like a Ferris wheel. Funny thing is, 1 is not at the top, 9 is at the top. We'll talk about why that is in a minute. Simon Sinek did this TED Talk that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And a lot of us that have followings in social media understand that. You follow people that are just so connected to you and you understand why they do that thing. They might do the same thing 50 other people do, but the way they do it, you like jive with. That's why you follow them. That's kind of what we're going to talk about with the Enneagram. So there's 9 core numbers, basic personality types. By the end of this, we'll talk about how even if you have one primary number, you're going to relate to like 5 different numbers, really. And that's one of the books that I reference a lot in here too. So the English word personality derived from the Latin word mask. So sometimes we wear a mask, right? We kind of mask things. I'll kind of refer back to lenses and masks interchangeably sometimes. It talks about where the Enneagram comes from. So depending on what part of the world you're in, you might say, this is where the Incans claimed that they found this on their etchings on the cave. And then Asian cultures will say like, well, no, we found this in our ancient history books. So from all the research I've done, kind of who knows is the answer, I guess I'm going to say for the short story version. But Americans, for the most part, understand that 1990s and on is when America was introduced to the Enneagram for the most part. So there was a friar, Franciscan man, Richard Rohr, and he released that book, The Christian Perspective, the Enneagram from the Christian Perspective. So that's when people that spoke English were really kind of more made aware of it. I have a fun little diagram here that I was like referencing before. Like imagine that you're hanging out with people on a Ferris wheel. We're all at a fair. Each of us has a little ride, a little cart. Now, if there are a couple 7s, for instance, I'm just going to pick on me and Kate because we're both 7s for sure. We're sitting in the 7 cup together. We see things through the same lens, if you will. We're still different people. We still have different reasons why we answer certain things, but we are similar in that way. If we're a 7, for instance, we can look up a little bit on the Ferris wheel across the way and we can see the 1s. We'll talk about why there's an arrow leaning from 7 to 1. We can look down a little bit at the 5s and we can kind of see what the 5s are doing. I know a couple of you, at least one of you's in here, is pretty sure you're a 9 or 9 ranked high in your testing, but it's real hard. You just can't figure out what you are. It's because the 9s, if you imagine that Ferris wheel analogy, if you're at the 9 cup and you're looking down, you can see into every other cup. You're looking at everyone else's little basket. So you can relate to everyone. This is the hardest number to type. These are the people that usually call me or text me if they're friends of mine and they know I'm interested in this and they're like, help me, I can't figure this out. So tuck that in the back of your head for those of you who maybe had a hard time trying to figure out what number they were. But we have a 9-sided circle, if you will. We have numbers next to each other, and remember that the 9's at the top instead of 1. 1s are known as the reformer. They're also sometimes known as the perfectionist. It depends. I'm married to a 1, been with the 1 for 18 years. I'm very familiar with the 1s. And if you look on the screen to the left, you'll see the different quotes at the bottom. These are the quotes that 1s oftentimes will find themselves saying. Or people will say them about them. You don't like it when people ignore or break the rules. You like to keep the RV tidy, plan the travel routes. You love checklists, that kind of stuff, right? Kim's just laughing. So everybody has different levels of health. And we'll talk about that when we go through all 9 numbers. Everyone's going to be healthy at their best. There's a big category in the middle where you're kind of on autopilot, which I honestly live a lot of right now in my life. And then what you look like kind of when you're at your worst. those, feel free, like I said, to screen capture those. But those are kind of the differences where you can see the benefits of that type. Like, oh, wow, I would love to be friends with someone who's productive and idealistic and very conscientious and orderly. But then you're like, oh, uptight, controlling, anxious, jealous. I don't know if I want to call myself that, or I don't want to be friends with that. But that's at your worst. We'll talk about that too. So I've added to each of these slides some suggestions. It doesn't have to be something, but the queen idea I have for a 1 is someone who's an online educator. There's other, obviously, I talked to Kim, I think it was Kim about it. 1s are usually like in the corporate world, the pilots, the surgeons, the people that are the detail-oriented, will make sure to check every single checklist before they move on with their job. So that's like the corporate version of what a 1 would be. Everybody and every number has a core fear, a core desire, the weakness, and then the longing. And that's what I was talking about earlier with the pilot and the surgeon. You can see that there. It makes sense to everybody. All these fears people are going to relate to. But the core desire and the core longing will really differentiate, because a lot of people will read this and go, well, yeah, I'm fear of being bad and evil and angry, but I don't really have the same longing, or I don't really have the same desire. So kind of read ahead on that. So moving to number 2, I know we don't have any here, but this is a very common number statistically. When I've researched like what are the average numbers that are most popular, you'll run into a lot of these, and they're one of the easiest numbers to relate to, especially if you've ever had children. Maybe you don't have children at home anymore, or maybe you don't have children. But if you ever had children, you probably went through a season of your life where you kind of felt like that, because you're always helping someone. Definitely a great listener. The friends that you have that you can think of are coworkers where you're like, man, they really want to know how my daughter's soccer game was, or they really want to know why we traveled to so-and-so. Like that could have been a 1. A good queen idea I thought for this would be a wellness or a health coach or a life coach. Like in the corporate world, a lot of time nurses are 2s. I know a lot of us had like corporate life before RV life. So that's an example there. They've got a fear, a desire, their core weakness. I'm going to kind of skim over this because we don't have anybody in the group now, but feel free to screen capture it if you're like, ooh, I think my husband or my mom or whatever. 3s. So the achiever. And we had a question that I'm going to talk later in the Q&A about that related to this, because there was a 3 that said, I used to be a 3, but I don't know if I am anymore. The 3 is the queen idea, is the team builder. I really don't like the word influencer, but I say it because it makes sense to people. It's the people that can rally the troops and influence people. They can be at their best. They can be at their worst, just like all the numbers. They, in the corporate world, think of the CEOs, like the big network marketing people. Fear, desire, weakness, longing. Screen capture, if you will. 4 is the artist. So it doesn't have to be an actual artist paint in hand, but a little more, about 20 years ago, it would have been the emo people, like people that were more in their emotions is kind of when you hear of the 4s. They don't feel like they kind of fit in with everybody else. I know we all have kind of imposter syndrome, but they have like deep imposter syndrome. They don't feel like they really belong. So we've got that. Their longing is to be seen and loved. So that kind of makes sense, right? A lot of hairstylists. I've actually known a few yoga teachers that are also. And the really neat little side note I always like to point out with this is writers. People that write books and movies and manuscripts, they've used the Enneagram for years. And now that you've learned more about it, you'll start watching movies and you'll start realizing, oh, I can figure out what this number is. So has anybody, or everybody probably has seen Edward Scissorhands. They based Johnny Depp's character off of an Enneagram 4, like kind of very in themselves, unique and different. Funny thing is Johnny Depp has also come out to say that he is an Enneagram 4. So like that part was perfect for that actor. You get to see that play out for an Enneagram 4.
If you're anything like me and love soaking up that Midwest lake life in the summer, I've got a spot you have to check out. Coconut Cove RV Resort in Hazel Green, Wisconsin is an Our Journey campground that's packed with fun for the whole crew. They've got a 13-acre lake with an aqua park, sandy beaches, boat rentals, and tons of family-friendly activities. Whether you're in an RV, a glamping pod, or a lakefront cabin, this tropical-themed resort has what you're looking for. Click the link in the show notes to book now and start your journey with Our Journey.
So with visionaries, you are often the person who likes to be set aside. Your social batteries might deplete a little faster than other people. So you like to be in solitude a little bit more. But you kind of feel like that because, like it says here, you think thoughts are more reliable than feelings. And you can't always trust your feelings, which is opposite from the 4. The 4 trusts their feelings more than anything else. So for the queen idea with this one, I thought online course creator. Somebody who creates an online course would be really good because 5s are also usually the smartest person in the room. Whether they are boastful about that and like believe they're the smartest person in the room, they usually are the smartest person in the room about things too. But of course, at their worst, that can get to arrogance. So we'll go through that in a minute. So corporate jobs, administration, researching things, teachers, tech jobs, that's often a 5. 6, this is an analyst type person. And the best way for me to describe this person, they would be excellent at being a risk management person for like insurance. Like somebody who looks at everything and can immediately figure out what's wrong in the situation, what can be assessed, what can be changed. 1s are usually good at this too, so it gets kind of confusing. And this is like for an RV example, they always have backup plans to travel plans. Like I wish I had more 6 because they always know, well, if that doesn't work, we can do this, this, or this. That's great trait to have with RV. So I said safety coach, insurance. That's a really good one. The fear, the desire, the weakness, the longing. The longing is to be safe because they don't always feel like they are. Enthusiasts. So this is me and Kim and Kate. Do we love to meet everyone at the campground? Usually. So that's a good example. Do have a bit of FOMO sometimes over things. Does not plan rest days often. This is 0. Maybe it depends. Is usually optimistic and witty and joyful, but also can be escapist where it gets too overwhelming and you just do nothing. And can be more self-destructive in not regulating the highs and the lows of this is so amazing. I love this travel day. This is the worst travel day ever. It's been raining for 3 days, like that kind of up and down. So queen idea for them is travel vlogger, which I know a lot of us already do, even though we wouldn't call ourselves that. You are video, sometimes documenting your travels. So that would work. Any kind of pop-up, like I do pop-up yoga, or I know someone who's a 7 who travels full time and she does jewelry. So she sells jewelry at different campgrounds, like just kind of spur of the moment. She doesn't like plan it out. It just happens. Like, oh, I have jewelry, I'll sell it. And entertainers. The best example in the corporate world or in the Hollywood world I give is Robin Williams was an Enneagram 7. So like that overwhelming, high energy type of person. So actor, comedian, travel writer, artists, a lot of musicians are 7s. So we've got, feel free to screen capture this, the fear, the desire, the weakness, and the longing, and 8. So keep in mind too, if I've already said your numbers, so pay attention to the numbers around your numbers. So you're going to learn more about that. We can go back if we need to. 8's the challenger. The best description I have for this is it's in the corporate world known for a lot of attorneys are Enneagram 8s. So they're very strong-willed, but they're also usually right. And they like to let everyone know that this is the best path forward, and they consider arguing kind of intimacy. I don't know if I'm not married to an 8, but I have a friend who is, and I'm like, whew, that could get heated. But then at the end of the argument, it's like, oh, I feel so much closer to you. That would be an 8. They never do things halfway. They're usually very full. They are great event coordinators. Like if you want someone in charge of your wedding, your children's wedding, your birthday party, your big event, you probably want an 8 who's in charge of that. CEOs, ad execs, stuff like that. 9 is our last number. So that's the peacemaker. And like I said earlier, this is hard to test. A lot of people aren't sure if they're a 9 because they kind of just go with the flow and they relate to everybody and they're friends with everybody in every single friend group. And they don't feel like they want to be put in like a box because they can relate to everybody. That is that example of being in the Ferris wheel and looking down, and you can kind of understand and feel what everybody else is going through. Very empathetic people as well. So queen idea for this. nature guide, an editor, someone who maybe doesn't want to be in front of the camera, but wants to just do like UGC type stuff. Like I'm going to document this, take pictures, videos, send it to somebody, and they're going to pay me for it. But I don't want to be in charge of putting it out on social media and pushing it. That would be a good queen idea. And so then we have writers, artists, therapists, musicians, their fear, desire, weakness, and longing. The best example of 9 is if you're ever in a friend group and someone says, hey, where do you guys want to go to lunch? And everyone kind of has an opinion, but there's always that one friend that's like, oh, wherever you guys go. Yeah, whatever. And they're just super easygoing. Oftentimes that falls in line with somebody who's a 9. They do actually have a preference. Like, I want to go to this Thai place I went to last week, but I'm not going to say that because if I say that and somebody doesn't like the Thai, I'm going to feel like I made a bad decision. That's kind of my example of the 9. So find your number, your primary number on the circle. And because there's 3 of us, I'm kind of going to start with the 7s since we know 7s. So 7, you'll notice there's an arrow that goes to the 1. Everybody has a number that the arrow points to. So for 7, it's 1. For a 1, Penny, you're pointing to the 4. And then let's see, we had a 5. So if you're a 5, you're pointing to the 7. And then I think we had a 3. 3 points to the 9. Did I miss anybody of the primary numbers? That
Taylor,
number?
I have a question. I don't fit into any one number. I don't feel.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Do you feel like you fit into more than one? Or none of them do you really relate to?
A little bit of all of them.
Did you take the test or not yet?
I took the test a long time ago, and I think I felt the same way back then.
When Kim posted earlier today the link to the Eclectic Energies website, that test I like because it's short and it's kind of sweet and it's to the point. I would say take it again and you'll get percentages. You'll get, well, you might be this, you might be this, and you might be this. And then you can narrow it down a little bit. But I'm not going to guess that you're a 9 just because I said some people have problems guessing. That's okay. We can go through this again with you later. You can even message me and that's fine. So if you don't relate to any one number, it doesn't mean you're a 9. It's just you've got a higher likelihood of being a 9. And you can always reference back to this.
Okay.
But I'd say take that test again. And Nancy, when you take that test, if I haven't said this out loud already, if you get stuck on questions, and this is true for any of you if you want to retest because you're like, well, maybe this doesn't make any sense to me. Answer the questions the way that 18, 19-year-old Nancy would have answered them, unless you got married at 18 or 19, because that's usually when you were like the most yourself. You might have changed. Obviously, we change a lot from 19 on. But if you get stuck on a question, think, how would 18, 19 Nancy would have answered that question? And then move on. That's kind of my advice there.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, you're very welcome. And I'm happy if you want to message me later. I'm totally fine with that too. Okay, so we all have a number that we went to, right? Everybody had a number that the arrow went to. So that number is going towards your stress number, is the number that we all looked at. So from 7, you go to 1. From a 5, you would go to 7. The queen that was a 3 would go to 9. And Penny, your 1, you would go to 4. That's your stress number. So that's your number that when you're not healthy, when you're in stress. So you're really kind of like, I've had a lot to do. This is too much. I'm overwhelmed. So for instance, me, Kim, and Kate, we're 7s. So we go to 1. Not to pick on Penny because Penny said she was 1. It doesn't mean we look like Penny when we're stressed. It means we look like the anxious side of 1. And so real quick, I don't want to pick, but I just want to go back. So let's go. This is why this is important for the 1. One's at their best, great. Ethical, reliable, productive, a little idealistic. But at their worst, they're more judgmental. They're not as flexible. They're very dogmatic. Everything is black and white. They're very critical. So I will speak for myself that when I'm in a lot of stress and I'm in like more of a stressful season, I start getting more black and white when normally there's all kinds of gray area in my life. I'm like, no, it has to be done like this. We can't take a detour because that'll change. And then I need a checklist and I'm kind of controlling and I'm being uptight. And I realize that about myself because I know that that's where I go to. So that's what that number means. The stress number, that's what that means. So everybody has a stress number, but the good news is everybody has a health number. So 7 goes to 1. It's the negative side of 1. Then I'm going to quickly talk about where you go when you're in health, or in this case, security. So your security number, I'm picking on the 7 again, is when you go to a 5. And I'm going to skip back to 5 since there's 3 of us number 7s. We need to remember what the 5's all about. The healthy 5. So we're not looking at the at their worst side. We're looking at the at their best. So when we're really healthy, we're a little analytical, but we're also sensitive to other things. We can think of things objectively, and we're very perceptive on details. And we're like healthy in that we know how to say no. 7s aren't usually great about saying no. So we overcommit ourselves to things. But when we're really healthy, we're like, yeah, I'm just going to read a book and stay in tonight instead of going to that thing somebody invited me to. So that's your health and your stress. There's going to be questions because I flew through that. So again, we can talk later. Maybe we need to have an Enneagram part 2. But the reason why I brought that up is because we talked about it in the podcast as well. I feel like the best way to use the Enneagram in business and interpersonal skills, in trying to pitch brands, if that's what you're doing, and trying to film YouTube videos, if that's what you're doing, is think of the Enneagram in 2 ways: the lens, how you see the world, and also as the rumble strip. So the example I give is pretend like you're driving on the road and I'm the passenger princess, so I'm not the driver. But if you were driving your rig, or if you had a big truck and you're like, a big trucker, you're a bus driver and you're driving a big rig and you start to veer off your lane, you're going to hit the rumble strips and you can feel and that tells you to do something. It's your warning. Hey, alert. If you're drowsy, wake up, get back in the lane. You're veering off course. The Enneagram over the years has helped me so much to be my rumble strip, because I know what I look like when I'm healthy in a 7. And then I look and I pay attention more of when, I'm on the rumble strips. I'm getting very on the negative side of 1 right now. I need to recorrect and redirect myself. So that's the security, the stress. So already we've talked about your primary number. Then you go to a number in stress. Then you go to a number in health. And then in a second, we're going to talk about wings. And so really you are 1 primary number, but you've already learned about 3 different numbers, and we're going to hit 2 more at the end. So what about wings? There are wings. Look at your number again. On either side of your primary number is another number. So if you're a 7, you're going to see an 8 and a 6. If you're a 1, you're going to see a 9 and a 2, 3, 2 and 4, and then 5, 6, and 4. Those are all the ladies who were in with us today. If you're a 9, 8, and 1. When you're looking at these numbers, it's helpful to know a little bit about all the numbers, because, for instance, if you were a 1, the 9 and the 2 are very different numbers. Remember, we said 9 is someone who's extremely go with the flow. Whatever you guys want to do, that's fine with me. That's not what I just described as the 1, right? So 1s will go, definitely not a 9. I don't have any 9 in me at all. But think back, and I bet you can find some times in your life when you were really healthy, you were taking care of yourself, you were managing your stress, you were just in a good place, that you didn't really care where you went to lunch. It wasn't, you're like, the group wants to do that. Cool. Like, I'll do that. But the negative part of 2 could also be your other wing, the helpful or negative part of 2. And 2 is also not very much like 1. 2 is the helper. 1s want to do it all themselves and do it good and do it right. 2s are helpers. I'm married to a 1 who has balanced wings. So he can lean into the 9 when it doesn't really matter to him. He's fine with going with the flow. For the 2, he's very helpful. He's opening doors. He's lifting things. He's moving. I always used to think it was just because he was raised in Texas, but I think it's really a helpful side of him that he just wants to be helpful. He's still predominantly 1 through and through, but he really does have both of those sides. You might have balanced wings, just like a bird. You might balance a little bit off. Like if a bird needs to turn, they're not going to try to fly like this. They have to adjust if they want to fly to one side or the other. So for instance, I'll pick on myself. I'm a 7. I've got 8 and 6. I don't lean to the 6 very much. I usually lean to the 8. I can feel that 8 a little bit more. So now again, you've found your primary number. You've looked at what number you go to in stress, what number you go to in health, 1 wing on one side, and maybe even another wing on the other side. So really, you didn't learn about 1 number. It's kind of important to understand 5 numbers, right? And don't get me started when you try to figure out what your spouse's number is. Then you've got a whole lot of other numbers to remember as well. 3 levels of health. This is true for everybody. Does not just the Enneagram. Healthy, you understand what healthy is, right? It's kind of hard to recognize what your number even is. A lot of times 9s are not 9s. They're just really healthy people. They're just very self-aware, goes to therapy, journals, prays, meditates, whatever your health is, they just do that. And you don't really know your number because you're just really healthy. The average person is a little bit on autopilot, and they just kind of live in their own strength. That's the majority of the people. When I've read statistically, that's what most of us are doing. Sometimes we dip into the unhealthy, and sometimes we kind of come up into the healthy, but that's kind of the realms that we're talking about.
I have a question just before you jump in. Can your stress or your health numbers be reflective of where you are in your cycle?
From the reading that I've done, and I'm not a hormone specialist by any means, your core Enneagram number, your core personality type, all of that is always going to be the same primary. Same thing as when you were in the worst season of your life and you just lost a loved one, or you got divorced, or something horrible happened to you, as the best part of your life. You're still that primary personality type. It's just kind of how you were created. That's who you are. However, your cycle does mess with you in all different kinds of ways. And so I would say, depending upon where you are in life, either too, like if you're younger, like me, a little pre-perimenopause, menopause, or beyond, I would journal things out. I would definitely journal things out and be like, man, I felt like I was way more in my stress. And then look at it according to your calendar and see where you are. Because my guess is you're going to see a dramatic difference during like your luteal phase versus your, all that. But that's a really good question.
Okay, guys, how fun was that? Taylor brought such a fresh, relatable take on the Enneagram, especially for us women running businesses while living life on the road. And next week, in part 2, Taylor goes even deeper. She shows us what each type looks like under stress and how to shift back into a healthier state. She also shares a simple tool for recognizing when you're veering off course and how to course correct before burnout hits you. The best part next week in the episode is when our girl Nancy, hello again, she goes from feeling like she doesn't belong to any number to landing on a type that feels so her, right? It's the perfect reminder that the Enneagram isn't about boxing you in. It's about giving you tools to better understand yourself. You're not going to want to miss it. I will see you next week, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode and for being part of the RV Queens community. Remember to hit subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. And guess what? You can have conversations like I had on this episode with your fellow RV women who are living intentionally and making money on the road. Head to rvqueenspodcast.com/community to join RV Queen Circles today. It's a totally unique online space with a shared prosperity model that's all about community over competition. I'd love to have you be a part. All right, guys, I'll see you next week, or hopefully I will see you on the road.